The historical narrative of Jesus is a story in which a great deal depends on the ending. As we look at Revelation chapter 21 and 22 today, we're going to examine the ending of the tale of human history according to the apostles. What is the future that we hope for as Christians? What is the prize for which Christ has taken hold of our lives? If you have access to a Bible, I invite you to turn with me to the book of the Revelation of St. John. Throughout this two-part series, we're going to be looking at Revelation chapter 21 verse 1 through chapter 22 verse 7 in general, and Revelation chapter 21 verses 1 through 4 in particular. Chapter 21 verses 1 through 4 serve as an introduction to the larger passage, and as an introduction, these verses introduce the primary themes of the entire section. So all of our main points over the next two discussions will come from these initial verses. Over our next two discussions, we're going to explore the ending of this present chapter of the Christian story, as we discover four hopes of heaven that God has placed before us, four visions of God's future that life and the world often threaten to take from us. We'll encounter the first two hopes today, and the final two in our next discussion. The first can be found in Revelation chapter 21 verse 1, which says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away." Our first hope of the new heavens is this: heaven will be a place of new beginnings. This principle is expanded in Revelation chapter 21 verses 5 through 7 and chapter 22 verses 1 and the beginning of verse 2 with these words: "He who is seated on the throne said, 'I am making everything new.' Then he said, 'Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true.' He said to me, 'It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To him who is thirsty I will give to drink without cost from the spring of the water of life. He who overcomes will inherit all this, and I will be his God, and he will be my son." And then in chapter 22, verse 1, "Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb, down the middle of the great street of the city. On each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month." The Christian scriptures teach that heaven is a place where God makes old things new again. There are two words translated into English as new in the Greek of the New Testament. The term neos means new as in recent or new in time, but the term that is used here is the word kaine, which means new in quality or fresh. I'm inclined to understand this to mean that the new heavens are a place where Eden is restored, and the people once again travel the road that God intended for us when he first breathed the breath of life into Adam. Dr. Alan Johnson, in his commentary on Revelation, has said something that we should be careful not to pass over too quickly. Johnson has argued that God originally created the earth and heaven to be man's permanent home. Now, I'm not sure I agree completely, as our discussion today will make clear, but I think there's an important insight here. In my heart, I suspect that the universe is far too vast, too varied, and too intricate for God to have created us to look at it only at a distance. What would human civilization have looked like if sin and separation from God had never entered into the equation? Would we be exploring the universe? Might we have found ways to thrive on Earth while still preserving the creation that God gave to us and the diversity of species that he intended? Biblically, the tale of human ambition and our desire to achieve and to overcome is as old as Genesis. In Genesis chapter 11, we're told that all humanity gathered together in one place to build a temple that would reach to the heavens. We call their project today the Tower of Babel. But God came down and confused our languages so that humanity could not cooperate and could no longer work together. Whatever we might have built or might have become is a matter now left to science fiction. Human civilization on this side of eternity has been curtailed by the God who created us. But the new heavens and the new earth are a place where human civilization starts over, in right relationship with God and with each other. Who knows what we'll accomplish as sons and daughters of God instead of servants of ourselves and of our own selfish desires? The book of Revelation indicates that the new heavens and the new earth are a place where the journey of life begins anew, where we become as little children, with hopes, dreams, and aspirations. Even more, the fact that the new heavens and the new earth are described as new heavens and a new earth indicates that it's not merely spiritual, but also physical. So this journey begins in a world in which God lives, and it begins without sin, selfishness, suffering, corruption, sorrow, and loss. It is the old life, made new. And because the new heavens and the new earth are a place of new beginnings, we can persevere in the trials of this life, knowing that the limitations, failures, frustrations, and heartaches of this world will not determine the full scope and story of our lives. These chapters we are now living are an introduction, but the story will really take shape in God's future. So the new heavens and the new earth are a place of new beginnings. Our second hope is that the new heavens and the new earth will be a place of safety. And we find it in the second part of chapter 21, verse 1 of Revelation, which says, "And there was no longer any sea." It's important to be reminded of what the seas represented in first century Judaism. In the book of Revelation, the sea is the place where the dead resided and from whence the beast came, which means that in our immediate context, the seas are pictured as the sources of death and destructive forces. And the rest of the Bible has a similar understanding of the seas. Water is an element of the creation in Genesis 1 that God is not said specifically to have created. We presume that the introductory comment, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth," implies that God has created all that is, but in the actual account of creation, water is simply present. On the second day of creation, God did not create water as he had created light on the first day. Rather, the water was already there, and he proceeded to separate the waters and create a habitable space in the midst of them. That habitable space in Hebrew is called the Shemayim, usually translated heavens or sky. A friend of mine named Michael Purley also made me aware of another oddity of that day of creation. I hadn't noticed. Had you noticed, when you've read it, that it is the only day after which God did not say that it was good? The image of the waters, or the seas in Genesis, is one shared by many cultures in the ancient Near East. Waters and seas represented the abodes of the powers of chaos and destruction which war against the orderliness of the universe in general and against human life in particular. When the Hebrew prophets told the story of creation, they included the presence of these destructive powers. Genesis 1 tells us that the forces are being held at bay by the word of God which commanded them to separate, but they have not been obliterated or tamed. Throughout the First Testament, the waters remained a perilous and threatening force in creation. Water was used by God to destroy the earth in the flood account, to destroy the Egyptians during the Exodus, and to cleanse people in the Mosaic Law. Water is where evil went, and it's a power that only God could control and only God could safeguard his people from. The New Testament carries this same metaphorical understanding of waters and the seas. When Jesus calmed the sea, his disciples were terrified. When Jesus cast out a legion of demons from a man and sent them into a herd of pigs, the pigs ran off a cliff directly into the sea. And in our context in Revelation, the beast and the other forces of deception, suffering, and destruction all have come out of the sea. God's people on this side of eternity must understand themselves as living between the waters. We live in hostile territory, and the gathered forces of destruction surround us. We exist in a pocket of habitable space carved out by the word God spoke when he said, "Let the waters separate." But even that space has proven dangerous. Human sin has cracked the dome, so to speak, and has allowed the waters to leak back into creation. The natural state of creation in Genesis and throughout the First and New Testaments is not hospitable to life, human or otherwise. Apart from the word and hands of God, this universe is a realm of nothingness, of chaos, of destruction, of lifelessness. Without God's intervention, there can be no life. The waters would rush in and wipe everything out. Christians and non-Christians alike all live in this hostile, perilous space. I am persuaded with the prophets and apostles that this situation might have been God's intention for this time of human development, but it was never intended to be permanent. Revelation chapter 21 verse 1b tells us that in the new heavens and the new earth there will no longer be any sea. All humans are vulnerable to the varied environments of our planet. Even those of us who have not yet faced a debilitating injury or a life-threatening disease have certainly experienced minor ailments. Much of what we call religion is little more than an agreed-upon series of human attempts to appease or to manipulate some sort of force or deity in order to secure a safer existence in a more hospitable world. There are even some Christians who continue to maintain that this sort of control is the good news of Christianity itself. But of course, that is a deception. The kingdom of heaven that Jesus has described prior to his second coming is a place not only of celebration and joy, but also of persecution and suffering. There are, of course, moments and seasons of celebration, as well as an enduring joy that comes from hope in the midst of the direst of circumstances on this side of eternity. Certainly, the teachings of Jesus are not opposed to rejoicing and merriment. Nevertheless, Jesus has prepared the church for difficulty when he indicated that faithfulness to God in the new covenant will leave us vulnerable to the violence of nature, the frailties of human flesh, and the fruit of consequence, both resulting from our own choices and from the choices of others. Some of us have the blessing of living what many would consider charmed lives, but the greater majority of humans on earth experience this world in all its ugliness. It's a harsh, unforgiving, cruel, and indifferent place. The waters surround us, and the forces of destruction claw at us. God has promised care, compassion, communion, and guidance through the midst of these waters, but he has not promised deliverance or complete safety on this side of eternity. We can have hope in this life not because God has promised us only blessing if we follow him. Jesus went to the cross and asked all his disciples to follow him. We can have hope in this life because in the new heavens and the new earth there will be no sea. The powers of destruction and suffering that harass us throughout our journey through this world will not be tamed in eternity. They will be obliterated. The habitable space, conducive to life, will fill the universe, and God's people will live in peace. The new heavens and the new earth are a place of new beginnings. The new heavens and the new earth are a place of safety. In light of this hope, the faithful must not give up and embrace the world as it is. We journey through this world, living and clinging into the new heavens and the new earth. Those who accept the world as it is say things like, if this is all there is, then I'm going to live it up. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Those who accept the world as it is fight for what's theirs, curse those who persecute them, justify rebellions against a God they don't believe deserves their loyalty or faithfulness, or perhaps they don't even believe exists. Or they seek to insulate and protect themselves by carving out little pockets of safety in this perilous existence. The faithful, however, keep on following Jesus. We cling to the hope that the world is not as it will be. We bear each other's burdens. We celebrate and mourn together as the blessings and perils of this life fall on us, and we serve the world that persecutes us. Why would we do this? Because we trust the prophets and apostles when they have told us that this life is temporary and that it is a testing ground of faith. Because we believe God's promise that we'll begin anew in the new heavens and the new earth, and it will be a place where there is no sea. So I exhort you today, don't let the fickleness, the sufferings, and the perils of this world cause you to quit living into the story of Jesus. May it be true that we are not of those who shrink away and are destroyed, but of those who persevere and live. We walk through this world, into the new heavens and the new earth, and Jesus has shown us the only way out of the midst of these waters. And that road, as was evidenced in the life of Jesus, is laden with both blessing and curse, joy and suffering, celebration and mourning, but it leads into a world of new creation, of new beginnings, a world with no seas. We must cling to these hopes because there's too much to hope for, to lose. If you have turned aside from the road out of fear, or out of pain, or out of hopelessness, or out of despair. Might I encourage and invite you to claim these hopes again. He will bring us home, but we must persevere until that day. So to those who are following, I exhort you to continue. To those who are not, I invite you to join or to rejoin us on this journey out of the waters. Let's follow Jesus together.